Hello and welcome to Media Snack live from New York.
Greetings from London.
Good. So thank you for joining us. We're getting some comments through already, so we can jump to those in just a second. We stream live every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. UK time. And today's really exciting. We continue, we're very lucky to be joined with high-profile guests on Media Snack, as you know, if you followed us over the years, and today's no exception. In a minute, we'll be talking to Nadine Karp McHugh, who is now, you may know, used to work at L'Oreal and Colgate, and we'll talk about her time as the media leader, most senior media leader within those organizations, and now at the ANA, running this amazing initiative called See Her. And we've spoken a lot over the years, haven't we, about the role of a media director and just general leadership within the media function. And so we're going to be digging into that with her. I can see that I've completely worn the wrong shirt today. I'm sure I'll get told off by now later. So apologies if that's distracting for everyone. Good. Anything else to add, David, before we bring...
No, I'm looking forward to this.
Okay.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
Good. Where are you? There you are.
Cheers. There.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Hello. Good. Welcome to Media Snack.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Cool. Well, I don't know if you can see, we've already got one nice comment. Donna Verdica from Dentsu says, "Thank you for your leadership, Nadine." So thank you, Donna, for the question, or the comment, I should say.
Right back at you.
Anyone watching, please do add comments or questions that you have. We're live for the next 30 minutes, and this is going to be really good. So, welcome to the show. We've known you for a little while, but most people probably know you in from very high profile roles that you had both at L'Oreal and at Colgate-Palmolive as a media leader there. But now we'll come back and talk about media leadership, which is what we're really talking about.
Yeah.
But I wanted to touch first on your new role at ANA, which you joined at the beginning of this year, pre-pandemic.
Yes, my timing is great.
And I guess, a lot of people are familiar with the See Here initiative, which has been an amazing thing. It's been running for a number of years and involves a lot of ANA advertiser members.
Yeah.
Maybe just talk us through that. What is that initiative, and what was it that inspired you to leave the comforts of a high-profile media job for this important thing?
Yeah, so it was definitely a time where, being at L'Oreal, being at Colgate, I had gotten a lot of, calls over the years from recruiters about different jobs, but it would have been doing the same thing that I'd done before, which I could have done. And when they defined the challenges, I knew what they needed, having done it a few times before. But this was different. This was really about purpose. And when Bob Leodis approached me about coming to run this very important movement at the ANA, it's sort of a separate operating division is what he wanted to set up. I couldn't say no, because I thought if anybody else took this job and I was on the sidelines, I would just regret it and I would be angry and So I figured I had to take a chance and do this, because it spoke to a lot of the things I was doing volunteering over the years with Advertising Women of New York. That's now she runs it. I was always speaking at the Girls Lounge, now TFQ with Shelley Zallis. I did mentoring. So this just felt like the natural next thing to do. And then on the agency side, I also ran Dove. I was part of the campaign for Real Beauty, exciting history at Unilever with that. We did some great stuff with Fangirls at L'Oreal Paris. So to me, this was a broader way of really trying to affect change, and I couldn't say no. So See Her's mission is all about driving the accurate portrayal of women and girls in advertising, marketing, media, and entertainment, so they can really see themselves as they truly are, but also all their potential, right? And it's more important than ever, who knew, as I was taking this role in January, given the fact that we went into not one, but two real pandemics. And we always say, and this was before the pandemics and the major tipping point with social justice, that we are all about seeing all of her in all her glory. That's how I like to put it. And so it's all shapes, sizes, colors, ethnicities, sexual orientation, religion, and abilities, because she is not just a female, she's multidimensional, and all of these things play into who she is. So so we're sort of the catalyst between the marketers and the rest of the marketing landscape, media, etc., to help drive this change. It's data driven. We have a gender equality measurement score. Mark Pritchard is one of our co-chairs, and he's been famously quoted, and we use it all the time because it's so important to say that we're a force for good and a force for growth. And through data, we've also been able to validate that this is, of course, it's a big, of course, but it's good to have the data to say so, that it's actually really is good for business. We've done attribution modeling analysis with our partners at IRI, and we've been able to validate that with positive GEM scores, you actually can increase sales lift by 2x to 5x, depending on the marker that we've measured. So it's enormously important for society. It's important for our businesses moving forward, and it's the right thing to do. Yeah. So I had to come over and see what I can do. I love playing those productive change catalyst roles, and this really speaks to me.
Good. What's been the sentiment within the marketplace with that narrative, and since you've been there at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, so that's interesting too. You know, we had a private session last night with a few people, and I said, and I'll open it up to you guys too. You know, so I left a great role at L'Oreal running the U.S. Media function, and we work with great partners at Wavemaker and other agencies, and it was a terrific role. So I leave, I go mid-January. I'm super pumped. And then March 13th was the last day in the office because everything shut down. And it was nerve-wracking. I thought, uh-oh, now how is this going to go? Because usually the first thing to go are memberships. It's a non-for-profit. And I thought, here we go. What did I do? Oh, my God, the timing couldn't have been worse. But it was actually the opposite. And we've grown significantly. We have the highest amount of members we've had to date over the last 4 years since CHER started, because this is resonating with everyone. Brands are super aware that consumers are scrutinizing everything brands are doing, that they're looking at where they show up, how they show up, and they're voting with their wallets. So brands have really stepped up, marketers have stepped up. We've opened up membership to media companies and tech companies and agencies, and they, as our partners at Dentsu, thank you, Donna, another shout out to you, have really jumped on board, recognizing how important it is for brand equity, and also to drive what we need to in the world, with women taking such a hard hit within both of these awful pandemics. So the momentum has been ridiculously strong given, you know, the world we're living in right now. Yeah. So it actually renews your faith in our business and in man and woman. Yeah.
Good. And I should say, I mean, both David and I, as fathers of daughters, you know, these are important things, because the you know, advertising is one part of it, but culture and entertainment,
yes.
And particularly, as we know, I mean, my oldest daughter is a little bit older than David's daughter, but you know, is now exploring the world and content, and just personally, I know we think these initiatives are so important.
It does hit home. It hit home for me too. I have a daughter and a son, and my son, I am told, I've raised very well according to the girls, so I'm proud of that. But with my daughter growing up, we have two verticals. We have See Her, Hear Her, which is about also driving the accurate portrayal in front of and behind the mic in music, and then we have See Her in sports, because women make up 44% of all athletes, but they only get 4% of media coverage, and most of it is sexualized and demeaning. Mm-hmm. So there's a real need there. My daughter was in 4th grade around, so she was probably 10-ish, maybe 8 or 9, and she was very involved in sports. My husband coached and managed all their teams, and she came home one day. She wanted to be a basketball star, and one day she came home and said, I don't want to do that anymore. And I asked her why. She said, because nobody cares about girls' sports. And I said, why do you say that? She said, well, they're not. She goes, think about it, Mom, because she was snarky then too. A little. And she said, now she's a teenager. She said, no, it's not on TV. And I said, what do you mean? Yes, it is. She goes, not on the channels that count, is what she told me. And she said, I don't want to do something that people don't care about. That's exactly me. And it's devastating because when you have kids, you want them to think they can do anything they want to do as long as they work hard for it. And as an 8 or 9-year-old, whatever age you are in 4th grade, she was already thinking, well, I can't do that. Nobody cares about it. It's awful.
I'm sure this is an ongoing journey that you're going to be embarking on. But how are you going to measure progress? Certainly in the sort of short term, how do you know whether it's working?
So glad you asked that question. It feels like a setup, but it's a good question. Yeah. So we're all data driven. So we've always had from the very beginning a gender equality measurement score. We call it GEM, which is the acronym that it represents. And we have it's consumer survey. So we go out and we actually ask consumers 4 questions that make up the index. We work with our partner ABX on that. And so far we've tested over 130,000 ads. So we also do similar for programming and content. And we're rolling out more in the near future across platforms and different content vehicles. But that's where we've done the attribution modeling with IRI, and we've been able to conclude that there's a correlation between positive GEM scores, gender equality movement scores, and sales lift. So we don't name and shame with marketers. So we'll share the individual scores because it's all about getting better, and improving and learning. And we also have private anecdotal results from each marketer about how it's actually moved their business beyond 2x and 5x. So, and it makes sense. You know, it goes into actually contextual messaging. If you are talking to me and I don't feel like you get me, then I'm not going to necessarily feel so great about your brand. We've also been able to measure purchase intent, brand reputation, and all of those scores go up double, triple digits when you have positive GEM. So it's there, the data's there, which gives marketers even more empowerment to do the right thing.
Yeah. And we've acknowledged as well. I mean, I think about a month ago, we on Media Snack, we had as a guest Belinda Smith, who you probably are aware of, and she works WFA as diversity ambassador at the WFA. And one of the things that we were talking about with her, and we've talked about with her a lot, and it came out of the episode, is that marketers have a huge influence. You know, they really do have a huge influence.
Yes.
And great privilege and leverage to make the kind of change in a much wider context. And even if we just think about the marketing, I know that you're talking, CEHO obviously stretches beyond that into other fields of entertainment. But just even as a marketer, and you've been in that role, you know, we were talking about there being kind of 3 areas of potential impact. There's the content. So if you're making ads, they should be representative and that's good business, as Mark says. You know, that's good business. You've then got your internal business, right? You've got your internal media or marketing team, which kind of makes sense that should be reflective, at the very least reflective of your customer base, if not society broadly. Yep. And then the third influence is on what you might call your supply chain, which is you can use your influence as a marketer to ask your agencies for their approach and policy on diversity and inclusion as well. So you really can stretch out, and collectively that can make a big difference. How did you, before you were in this kind of CEHO role, obviously you said you were involved in so many other initiatives already.
Yeah.
But from a marketer's perspective, are you feel like you've got that leverage? Is that something which in these big corporations, maybe we don't talk specifically about L'Oreal or Colgate, but within big corporations, that you kind of have that ability to make that change?
Yeah, I think it's one of your responsibilities as a marketer within, both the Colgate role and the L'Oreal role were corporate roles. So we influenced the different divisions and the brands and how things were going to move forward from different aspects depending on your discipline, right? So I think it's a responsibility to bring it forward. When I was at L'Oreal, as an example, with See Her, we were very active because L'Oreal, is 70% of the employees are female. The majority of the products are geared towards women. So L'Oreal embraced See Her. I didn't have to push it through. They completely embraced it. But I partnered with the agency to say, this is table stakes. We need to do this. It's important that we show up in the right places. And the executive management was completely on board with that.
Yes.
So maybe
go on.
No, I was just going to try and maybe talk a little bit about kind of the leadership roles that you assumed in those two big companies, if that's okay, Nadine. I mean, I think you were a media leader within Colgate and L'Oreal cumulatively for about 10 years, a decade in those roles, both high-profile businesses that spend an enormous amount of money on media. And Tom and I have championed the role of the kind of chief media officer, media directors within organizations for a long time, because we see the enormous value that they can add in providing oversight and guardianship over such an enormous amount of money. How did you see that role evolve, perhaps from when you first started at Colgate to when you left L'Oreal at the end of last year, early this year?
I think it's evolved quite a bit. So both roles were all about driving digital transformation. I came from the agency side. I had run the Unilever business. My last role at Mindshare was chief client officer. So that gives you an enormous foundation, having worked across so many other businesses, to apply those learnings. And my background was strategic planning. So it was always about consumer centricity before that was a term, because comms planning was all about consumer centricity. And but it was through the lens of digital transformation. So, when I first started on the marketer side, it was about really embedding paid, owned and earned, because that was the way we sort of looked at it, and making sure that everything worked in the right way. Bringing on board all the social platforms like Facebook globally. And of course, the Colgate role was global. So it varies by country, really. You can't even say by region, because the regions are so broad. It varies by country what you can and can't do. And so it was all about setting up strategic priorities, understanding that, I would go to country and say, this is the way we're going. This is the direction. Here's why, and all the reasons to believe. But understanding that if there's 10 priorities, depending on the country, some will do 10 out of 10. Some might do, 5 out of 10. What was always inspirational there was when you had smaller countries that were still emerging, doing 8 out of 10. You could turn to the other one and say, hey, come on, guys. If South Africa can do it, so can you. And when, fast forward, the role at L'Oreal was also about digital transformation, but it was different. It was about e-commerce. It was all about data. It was about in-housing programmatic. So it was different, but still transformation, driving change, getting people to feel comfortable with moving forward, shifting dollars between what would be considered traditional to other media. And there were varying degrees of that too. So, and that's a really interesting area that I'd like just to explore a little bit longer. I mean, we talk about transformation within organizations, and there's been an enormous amount of accelerated transformation in recent years. And I think actually the pandemic has acted as a catalyst for even speedier decision-making internally within organizations. And we've talked about this a lot. But obviously you had a great deal of traction internally to enable you to kind of raise media higher on the corporate agenda, to enable transformational programs to take place and to be executed effectively. Did that come naturally within those organizations, or did you have to work to get that kind of traction and influence internally? And if you did, how would you advise perhaps other media directors in those roles to get greater internal influence? I think it was both, because both organizations are very matrixed, and most market organizations are very matrixed. So I would say, sorry, there's another buddy that just commented there.
We'll come to that. I'll bring that up in a second. It's a good question.
Yeah. So, so it was both. In both cases, executive leadership from the CEO down was supportive of the moves and the role. One of the things I was asked to do when I first got to Colgate was to measure share of engagement, which, you know, we could all still be talking about now. But it was a real, but you know, it came from the CEO down. It was such a great thing that I think marketers have come through the years to really appreciate media and the power of media and the role it plays in the marketing landscape. And so it was a great experience. And of course, you know, we cracked it to a degree as much as you can based on certain definitions, but it comes from the top. But then you also have to influence and organize around the organization to really get traction on the things you're trying to move on. So, you know, you need to give people a reason to believe. You have to create trust environments. At L'Oreal, we set up a meeting every week on Tuesdays at 2:00. We would have all of the leadership that affected or influenced media, and we'd all sit in one room, and we would share out, and we would discuss things, and we would debate, and we would get to, you know, to a greater place. So you need to bring people in, let them, you know, peek under the hoods with you, figure it out together. I don't think we ever came with an agenda that wasn't flexible enough to make sure that everyone's voices were heard. And if I used to promise at L'Oreal when we all started meeting, I promised them 80% satisfaction. And they were like, what? And I said, well, if I told you 100%, I would be lying, because we're a matrixed organization. So there's always going to be somebody that doesn't feel like their voice was heard in the right way, that didn't get exactly what they wanted. So I promised 80% satisfaction, and it became a joke. It became a loving joke with, you know, across the teams, because they knew we were telling them the truth and we were being as transparent as we had, you know, we could be. And it was all about driving the greater good for the businesses. You know, it wasn't about power. It wasn't about, and in both instances. So, but yes, I forgot about that 80% satisfaction. But the look I got at first was kind of like, you know, and then they were like, we know 80%. I'm like, exactly. Otherwise I'd be lying to you.
I'd love you to share when you joined L'Oreal, this wonderful story about where the job title came from, because you were I think from our perspective, I think the first high-profile media leader that used the kind of omni-media and omni-channel view, which I remember at the time thinking, what is that? That's, you know, what a pretentious job title.
I do.
Well, it just,
pretentious? Oh my goodness.
now, you know, everybody's talking in that way. So that was quite prescient and quite a visionary. So but it's a lovely story. So maybe you could just share that with everybody.
So I can't take any credit for it. When I was going to work at L'Oreal, Marie Goulon, who I'm butchering her name, I'm sure, so sorry, Marie, but she knows my French is awful. So she was the CMO and she was my boss. And when I accepted the role, she called me, you know, to welcome me, etc. She said, now, what should we have your title be? And I said to her, well, it should at least be integrated media communications or something like that. I was very also adamant. I also had creative solutions as part of my title. And I'll get to that in a minute. But for the omni media piece, she said to me, I don't want to do integrated media because everybody argues about what's in, what's out. She said, let's just call it omni media, and it's everything, and there's no question. Yeah, and I remember pausing on the phone thinking, that's genius, and I'm going to love working for this one, which I did.
That clinched it, right?
Yeah.
And then that means it's a mandate. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about it. It's not a job. You know, so much of the media, you know, the media directors that sometimes feel like they're part of a siloed operation. You know, media is such a specialist silo within the marketing organization, and you know, we champion that to be more central. And there's a lot of media directors that don't feel they have a mandate across actually, or even all the company's media investment.
Yeah.
So to come from the CMO,
that
was called Omni. Now makes a lot of sense.
She is quite the visionary, Marie. So she always go around corners. And then I insisted on the creative solutions. That was really important to me because I had, while I was at Colgate, gotten a master's degree in organizational creativity and change leadership. And I recognized and have a passion about driving creative solutions, and it has to be totally you need to immerse yourself in that, in our worlds, because they keep changing all the time and it's so fluid. So I really wanted that creative solutions piece as part of the title too. And she had no issue with that. She totally got it. So that became my very long title if you look at my LinkedIn profile.
I remember that. But I think it's been an inspiration to many others as well, because increasingly that is the role of the media director. You know, we've mentioned this many times on Media Snack. I think, you know, if you're in charge of a large market like North America or in a global role, the media director's role is either being spreading out across adjacent functions with a great mandate from the CMO, which we think is something that should be championed. But without that mandate, actually the job can shrink, because actually you're getting pressure from adjacent functions and maybe losing control of spend to e-com or, you know, performance teams or in-housing or, you know, other parts of the business. So
yeah, I would say
really good.
I would say a watch out, just to build on that, is a lot of, I've seen this sort of span over my career. There's a lot of people that think media has become such a broad term that a lot of people think that anyone could do it. And it's actually the opposite, really. And you need that foundation in strategic media planning to understand how to embrace all of the new media, where it fits in, because at the end of the day, it's a holistic view. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir with you guys, but since we have an audience out here, hopefully, it's a strategic, it's a broad view that helps you to embed effectively all of the new media, all of the platforms, and how to message appropriately. So I think it's really important. Measurement, I think, should be part of that. Data for sure, and certainly e-commerce, because everything is shoppable. I mean, what's not shoppable these days?
That's right.
Yeah.
So, shoppable, etc.
Very important message. Well, people do watch, and media directors do watch. And if you're a media director, and as we know, there are many of you out there,
you get a lot of views. So,
but are struggling with a little bit of that internally. Trying to get control and influence. And it's not a power broking thing. It's just that you can have such a positive influence over so much of the adjacent functions from media.
Yeah, agree.
So very good advice as usual. Let's just, Nadine, maybe you can bring up the comment here from Jeff Leco. I think just referring back to the See Her initiative. So how much is that shared with other trade bodies, or is that seen very much as an A&A thing?
Yeah, well, the A&A and the WFA partner, all the time on many initiatives. I should have mentioned, so thanks, Jeff, for keeping me honest. We actually are global. So the GEM measurement is available in 14 countries, and it's the 14 countries that are the likely suspects that represent 87% of all global spend. So we are available there, and we go as big and as broad as any of our marketing members or members in general want to. So.
Good. Great, thank you, Jeff. Keep the questions coming. So what's next for See Her then? What's the ambition? Where can you take this post-pandemic?
Well, we're continuing to grow our membership. The ambition is that 80% of all measured media will be gender biased free across all diverse and intersectional lenses by 2030. So we have little less than 10 years to go, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. But as we get more members in and everyone embraces, in the beginning of the pandemic, we put out something called the See Her Forward Marketing Essentials Toolkit, because we wanted in one place to be able to empower marketers to embed gender equality across marketing and media. And so there's pieces of it that can fit into any marketer's process. You can dial things up or down depending on what your business challenges are. So the more members we get embracing those tools and embedding them within their own processes, the faster I think we'll get to our goal.
Yeah. That's really good. And do you have, you've mentioned Mark Pritchard, P&G, has been a big advocate of this initiative and others. I'm trying to make this not too much of a loaded question, but in your dealings with A&A members, do you get more buy-in from female marketers than male marketers? I mean, so the question is, are male marketers supporting this enough?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. And you're right, it is a loaded question. But as I'm just going through the members in my head, and I think so. So, yeah, we have both. In fact, during Ad Week coming up, we'll be launching formally another vertical called The Men Who See Her, because we've had such great leaders that have been supporting this initiative from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to make sure that we had that conversation going as well. You know, many of them also have, talk about their daughters, their sisters, their wives who, are equal partners and out there really, setting the world on fire and doing what they are passionate about. So there's a lot of conversations and why it's important for their businesses, but also, they talk about their personal lives. I think it hits home. So I've seen it both ways. We haven't had anybody sort of, brush us off for male or female, I mean, clearly sometimes because of your own experiences within the marketplace or career-wise or whatever the case may be, it could get a little bit more personal for a woman because she gets it. But I haven't seen a guy not get it.
Do you think females are massively underrepresented within the kind of the media leader community, both at large within the industry, but also in particular within large kind of marketing organizations?
Yeah, I think there's work to be done across the board. If you look in almost any business, the majority of the general employees might be female, but when you get to the top ranks, it's not necessarily skewed equal. And I do think there's opportunity to make it more balanced, which is always good. So, and then when those women do get into those roles, it's important that they get the support they need and the respect they need to do things effectively. So I think there's room for improvement, and I think that's across the board. Yeah.
Good. Well, listen, you've got in David and I, you've got two very strong advocates and supporters, and so sign us up for Men Who See Her, because that's actually a very important part of the discussion. Actually, I think, and I
agree, Tom.
I love that. And we're lucky enough to work we work in a company. We own the company, obviously, but we work in a company which is majority female, and we were going through some resource kind of structures for next year, and I realized that actually I'm responsible in a part of the company where I'm the only male.
How do you feel about that?
I love that. I have so much more, frankly, more confidence. I have more confidence in that.
You're a perfect person to join the Men Who See Her.
Very good.
I see. Yeah, and you can't see, but I can hear mine as well. I'm apologize if you can hear any stomping around, and you can hear her. Yeah, definitely. Good. Well, listen, Nadine, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to recognize.
I should point out, so there's probably some eagle-eyed viewers will spot that I seem to have all the books. They always have no books, and I know that you're about to move house this weekend, so good luck with that.
I have a ton of books that I need to get rid of some, and they are not here. That's why I have all these bookshelves, but I am in the process of moving. Yep. Good.
Well, listen, good luck with the move.
Thank you, Nadine. Very impressive.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Told you that was going to be good.
Awesome. I feel very inspired. That's the job well for the weekend. Thank you again for good questions and comments. We didn't get to everything, unfortunately, but some brilliant insight there from Nadine. One of the real leaders in the media industry over the last decade, and you can learn a lot. I mean, I think this is something that you want to go back and actually just listen to exactly the words that she talks about in terms of leadership in those media roles, if you're in a media role or aspire to be in a media leadership role. But I think that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week.
Bye for now.